Well, welcome. We're glad you've joined us today. We are here for the next installment of Coffee with Jim, and my guest today is my friend Bernard Kinsey. Bernard is an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and a consultant. In addition to working with numerous companies and institutions, Bernard's been an advisor to the governments of South Africa, Germany, England, and France on economic development topics. Bernard and his wife, who have been married for nearly 54 years, have been dubbed one of the most respectable couples in Los Angeles. Bernard and Shirley are also art collectors, having assembled one of the largest privately held collection of African-American art and artifacts in the world. Most importantly, Bernard and Shirley are Pepperdine Waves. Bernard graduated from Pepperdine's Grazia Dio Business School, and Shirley graduated from our Graduate School of Education and Psychology. Welcome, Bernard. Glad to have you here today.
Jim, it's good to be here, and thank you so much. It's been a joy working with you and your team, getting this program together.
Well, it's our pleasure, and we look forward to further engagements down the line that we're going to be talking about later in the program. Give our listeners a sense of the path you traveled prior to arriving at Pepperdine.
Well, West Palm Beach, two family parents that met at Florida A&M, which is where I went to school and met Shirley, and Khalil went to undergraduate school. And probably Florida A&M has probably the most impact in terms of the Black middle class of any college, in the Southeast. So we really came out of a situation right during 1963 with the demonstration. Matter of fact, I met Shirley after she was arrested for demonstrating to open up the movie theater in Tallahassee. So that's sort of how we met. I saw this cute little young lady, I said, and she had conviction and a purpose in life. And so it was pretty easy from there. Not that she was easy, but it was pretty easy for me to try to pursue her. So and I tell people all the time, the best thing, if you make a decision about picking the right partner, you can't hardly mess up your life. And our life has been just wonderful because of, the partnership that we formed 57 years ago.
Wow. So tell us, what did you study at Florida A&M?
I was a math major. In school, I started off in engineering. The Sputnik in 1961 was a big deal. Went there, and then I changed my major to math and graduated in '66. Shirley, was in English and graduated in '67. Then we moved to California and got a job here, and that came about in 1965. Nick Walker and I were integrated the park system at Grand Canyon. We were the first national park rangers. And that got me to the West Coast. And then we went on to Los Angeles and then San Francisco, and really kind of fell in love with the West Coast, never thinking we were coming back. And lo and behold, we go back to Florida A&M. Reverend Cunningham, gets me an interview with an oil company, and they're trying to integrate their sales force. So they hire me to come to Los Angeles. So we come here with $26 in a job, 50 some years ago, and we made a life, and it's been a wonderful life.
So talk to us about how you ended up, Pepperdine ended up on your radar screen, and why the two of you each chose to enroll here in the various programs.
Well, back in 1973, 72, MBA, people didn't know what an MBA was. I did. And I knew I wanted a career in business. And I had heard good things about Pepperdine. And Pepperdine at that time was right there on Vermont, not too far. We lived in Englewood in our first home. And I tell you, one of the things that the impact of Pepperdine in terms of me conceptualizing my strengths and my management style was the number one thing that Pepperdine did. And I learned a great deal, but the thing that I took from Pepperdine was a simple principle called, it's a problem solving technique. I think I may have mentioned it. Is who do I know who knows who I need to know? And if you capture that, you can solve any problem in your life. Because who do I know who knows who I need to know?
Who do I
So,
know who knows who I need to know?
so
Okay.
let me give you real quick. The president is a one call guy. I'm about a 2.5 call guy. So what you want to do to the extent that you can get up that food chain, that you can call people and they'll call you back, then you're going to solve your problem. And we always say that people have, if you have small dreams, you're going to have small obstacles and small payoffs. But if you have big dreams, you're going to have big problems and bigger payoffs. So what we always choose is to have big payoffs, which means you got to work harder and you got to find the people in your life that can help you solve the problem. I'll give you one quick one. Florida A&M University Band coming to the Rose Parade, and the director wanted to play at the Staples Center. I made 2 calls and got it's pretty amazing. I made 2 calls and got Chick Hearn Lane closed for the 100 to do a halftime show right there at a Laker game. But if you don't know people or if you don't have the right, what I always say, you leave behind is what's going to keep you coming on the next call. In other words, and what we've tried to do, Shirley and I, is always leave behind good relations. That's what this thing's about.
And so your time at Pepperdine, some of the principles that you learned launched you in your career is what you were telling me earlier. In addition to the things that you just mentioned, is there anything else you could think of that's like, here's what I carried with me from Pepperdine in my MBA program that launched my career at Xerox that we'll get into in a moment?
Let me see if I can do it this way. So I get an MBA, I go to Xerox, and I'm the only guy that has a BS in the service department. So I knew that I had been underhired. And I tell people, if you're underhired, you're going to probably not ever catch up. I mean, you just don't catch that up. And because of some lucky breaks and a few people saw my talent, they immediately promoted me to the job I was supposed to have had when I started with Xerox. And that launched my career. But the reality is of having an MBA really provided me with the basis for understanding what I needed to know. In other words, I read about 2 hours a night, even now. So I've been reading all my life, and I mean, Black folks and money is what I read now, but back then it was management, and business economics. So as I grew, I started changing my focus. And back then, because of my Pepperdine master's in Florida A&M, I knew that to compete, you had to gain knowledge, and we call it discovery. You're always trying to discover something that you don't know, so you can keep growing and becoming a better person.
Well, tell us about your time at Xerox. You're credited widely with helping them dramatically diversify the workforce in Xerox. So tell us kind of how that started and what your methodology was.
Well, Gene Ruffin, passed 2 weeks ago Wednesday. One of my mentors and one of the guys I think most responsible for the Xerox Black employees here on the West Coast, Ken Amos, Barry Rand. We had an extraordinary group of young brothers and sisters back in 1971 that basically decided that we were going to change the contract with Xerox because the contract we had was not fair. And once we changed that contract, we began to push Xerox to get out of South Africa. People don't know that we started that process. We started Xerox on getting the first Black board member, Bernard Jordan, and which resulted in, well, here's another way to say it. We had about 1,000 Black people working at Xerox when I started. Because of the Xerox Black employees, when I left 20 years later, we had over 14,000 Black people working at Xerox, the most diverse organization in America business in the top 20. And with that, we were able to change so many things. Matter of fact, when I left Xerox in 1991, there were 26 Black vice presidents that we had put in jobs. You follow me? So, when we wrote, we did an article with Fast Company about the principles. Those principles came out of having worked with so many wonderful Black men and women, and how we actually cracked open Xerox and then cracked open corporate America in terms of making it more diverse. And let me just say this, the way we ended up with the first Black female CEO wasn't that she was picked out of nowhere. We got her that job in terms of the first training job. The training jobs in Xerox didn't allow for Black engineers. And we forced Xerox into going in and hiring Black engineers, and guess who they hired? Ursula Burns. 20 years later, she's the CEO. And that's the way it should be. In other words, we know that this is not a question anymore, particularly in 2020. It wasn't a question in 1970s, 1980s. But what we're continuing to fight is for this legitimacy and agency that our citizenship is important in this country.
Right, right. Well, you mentioned this article that Fast Company published that you wrote about the 20 tips. Let me get the title of it. The 20 guiding principles to ensure a diverse and equitable corporate culture. I keep a copy of this on my desk since I met you 6 or 8 months ago and read about this. So let me point out a couple of them that illustrate what you were just telling us. One of you said, ensure that there is a pool of Black candidates in your management program and provide mentorship. Another one was ensure that Black women are represented equally in the workforce gender equity. So what you've just told us is 2 of these principles led to the CEO of Xerox. Am I interpreting correctly?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the pool of candidates, particularly Black candidates in all of the fields that corporations need are there. The question is we always say you have to start at the top. The CEO has to be the driver of this. David Kearns was the driver of the affirmative action, we call it back then, with Xerox. But we met with David Kearns constantly to continue to push him and push the board in terms of doing things differently and allowing people the opportunity to be able to fail or to win on their own merits. And that's really all this is about. You know what I mean? Affirmative action is not giving somebody something. I mean, somebody said, well, Bernard, you got promoted in Xerox because you were Black, but they don't look at it. I got more degrees than the guy next to me, and I'm #1 in the country for the last 15 years. But that we know that that's the racism that we have to deal with. And we just take that, we say racism is like rain. It's either falling on you or gathering someplace. And we just say carry an umbrella. You know what I mean? Because we're serious about getting where we want to go.
Right. Amen. Well, I'm looking at the very first one of these 20, and it says change starts with the CEO. And exactly. I will tell you that I appreciate you emphasizing that now. And I hear that. And that's why I keep it on my desk is change starts with the CEO. A couple other ones I wanted to highlight. Your corporation and organization should look like the communities you serve. Talk to us a little bit more about that. Are you talking about the local, the national, the international? Tell us, unpack that a little bit more.
Well, we started in 1977. I took over the branch in Oakland, California. The branch was 82nd in 1976. By 1977, we were #1 in the country. We hired 99 Black people in Oakland out of 300. We had 33% of our population, management population was Black. 52% of our management was female back then. Same thing with Latinos and Asians. In other words, if Oakland is 43% Black, you should have more Black people there. If you go to San Francisco and San Francisco is 20 or 25% Asian, you should have more Asians. I mean, it's just natural. So what we're trying to do is to say, what we need to do is just look at, if we're serious about our customers, we're serious about our employees, we'll follow common sense rules, and that's one of them that worked. Another one that we used a lot was breaking up white islands. And white islands exist all over American business. In other words, there are organizations and groups that never have people of diverse color or gender. And we know that when Black people or women are in the meeting, the conversation changes. And that's the conversation that we need to change all throughout America. But you can only have that if you have participation in those particular meetings.
Right. Amen. One other of the suggestions you make is develop partnerships with HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities such as Florida A&M, to create a recruiting pipeline for internships and job opportunities. Apply your distinctive competence to their needs. Tell us about the efforts of Xerox in that regard. Well,
we expose Xerox. The good thing about we call it the road show. There's a PBS special they did on about 7 or 8 of us, but it was 5 of the 7 of us came from Black colleges. You know what I mean? So we were coming out of the civil rights movement. We were coming out of the same kind of experience. And matter of fact, we could almost, Ken Amos's parents were almost identical to my parents in terms of values and background and education. And we found ourselves extraordinarily lucky to be around people that were so much like us and had this burning desire to change America. And it made it it made it a lot easier because we always agreed on our purpose in life. So at FAMU, I'll give you an example. FAMU graduates about 1,500 students a year. We graduate more Black people at Florida A&M than the combined Big Ten, Pac-12, and Ivy League schools put together. So if we wait around for Harvard or Yale or whomever to educate our population, it won't happen. So HBCUs are a critical junction there. Matter of fact, over 22% of the graduates come from 100 schools, whereas there are 3,500 colleges and universities in America. But 22% of the Black people that graduate come from there. And more importantly, in STEM, which is the big deal, in science and math and that, almost all of those that get postgraduate degrees come out of Black colleges. So it's an integral part of this. And we ask, corporations to take off their blinders and go to these Black colleges and begin to recruit like we did at Xerox.
Well, I'll let you know and let the viewers know that we are taking this to heart, and Pepperdine Law School has developed a partnership this year with HBCUs to try to increase the pipeline to our law school, which has had an incredible impact on this year's admissions statistics. And so please know that your advice is being heeded and is paying dividends for Pepperdine in terms of us living up to our aspirations for a diverse student body in all of our schools, and including and especially the graduate schools, where we can go directly to HBCUs and create that pipeline. So talk to us a little bit about your time as COO of Rebuild LA. How did that come about, and what did that entail?
Well, Rebuild LA, I left Xerox after 20 years, 1991. And basically, Shirley and I had figured out that by 1991, we really did not have to work anymore because we had saved our money. Let me go back and just, give you a pin on that. So we started in 1967 with $26 in a job. And we decided that we were never going to spend her paycheck. We were never going to spend my raises or bonuses. And for 15 years that she worked, we never did. So the fact of the matter is, by the time we got to 1991, we really had figured it out. We knew that we did not have to work anymore because we had saved and invested, in apartment buildings, commercial buildings. We did the whole thing, okay? We bought the used cars, used furniture, but we always stayed on focus. Our simple thing is not what you make, is what you keep. So saving money is still, and being frugal is still 99% of our ethic today. I mean, we live below our means. The only, I guess, art is one of the, we love art, so we do that a lot, and we love travel, but other than that, we are pretty.
We'll give you those. We'll give you those.
Yeah, but everything else, we don't care anything about cars and clothes and all that stuff. That just comes with the territory. So, by the time we got to 91, I started consulting. We did a big job in, give you a quick deal, the electric car company. So a former Xerox guy, good friend even to this day, Ted Morgan, they were forming this electric car company in Santa Rosa. So they hired me to take them to Washington to meet, the Congress people so we can get legislation, so forth and so on. So from there, I ended up, after the riots, that day, it was devastating here in LA if you were here. And David Kearns, who had now left Xerox and now was the number 2 guy in education for George H.W. Bush, called me and he said, Bernard, I'm coming to LA and I want you to show me around because the president has asked me to be the czar for the response to the riots. So for 2 weeks, I never heard from him. And on another meeting I'm having with Peter Uberoff, he tells me that David Kearns had called him and told him, if you only have to hire one guy, hire Bernard Kinsey, you know, for this COO job. So, and then I later found out that David Kearns, while he was here, had detected he had cancer and had to go back and so forth and so on. So it was a pretty bittersweet piece. But then we took over this job, you know, and man, it was the biggest, it was like I had worked all my life to do this particular job, you know. Matter of fact, I told somebody the other day, I wish they had given me the job of getting the vaccines out. I would have gotten everybody a shot. I mean, I really feel that I know how to do this stuff. So taking on, you know, this CEO and co-chair, we really had an opportunity to really change the conversation about how we were going to rebuild Los Angeles. And one of the key things that we did, I'll give you an example. One day I'm reading the LA Times and I see in the paper that Vons, the grocery store, had their suburban sales had no longer been keeping up with their new store sales. So I went in with Peter. I said, Peter, this is an opportunity. I said, we got 2.3 million Black and brown people that don't have grocery stores, and we have all of these stores in the white community that are not selling. So we called Roger Stanglin, the CEO, and brought him in, and I gave him, and I laid out the map. I thought it was back at Xerox. And I said, you can have all of these corners. And on that deal, he signed up for 10 supermarkets for $100 million. Then we went to Albertson. We went to Smart and Fountain. And before you finished, we had put in $300-400 million of just grocery stores. We did the same thing with paint stores and pharmacies and a service station. But it was a different model for the community because we said the community always relied only on the government. We said, America is a business country. It's not just government and community. So the three-legged stool was community, business, and government. So we brought, for instance, Toyota called and they wanted to do training programs. So we called John Mack here in LA and we said, John, we have an opportunity to set up a training program with Toyota. This training program trains 1,500 Black and brown mechanics over the next 20 years. You follow me? Marriott comes in. We said, and we used to tell each corporation, do what you do best. We don't want you trying to create something, just do that. So we ended up with over $500 million in commitments and $380 million in actual commitment in terms of spent money. And I'm proud of it today. You can go through South Los Angeles, there's no evidence of the riots. You follow me? Because that area has really been revitalized starting in 1992.
Yeah, well, thank you for your service to the community. The last guiding principle on your list was acquire or commission Black art for your offices. So I want to transition now to a conversation about your and Shirley's taking of your own advice to acquire Black art. And in our conversations earlier, you stuck with me when you said, you know, there's really not Black art or African-American art. There's art, and it just happens to be, you know, by or about the Black experience. And so talk to us a little bit about how you got started and how it grew, and then I'll ask a follow-up question. But before you do, I'll remind our viewers, some of you have already started doing it. In just a moment, we're going to turn to the chat, to the audience question portion, and some of you have already put them in there. Go ahead and put in the chat box questions you have. We'll have time for a handful of them that Lauren Cosentino will help us with. But talk to us about your collection of art and now the Kinsey Collection, and we'll kind of flesh out a little bit more about what that is.
Well, you know, Shirley and I said one of the best things we've done is our son Khalil. I mean, bar none. And back, you know, when Khalil was in the second, third grade, we could see that he was not getting the kind of education from a Black perspective that he needed. So we began to start supplementing that. I mean, Shirley was always the person going to Canyon or Palais or whatever with Black History Month, trying to supplement that. And that was a significant part of our wanting to give him a better understanding of his Blackness. Because it's one thing to grow up in the Pacific Palisades, a great community, but you can lose it if you're not careful. Matter of fact, we used to say to Xerox Black employees, you need to come to our meetings to get a shot of Blackness, because white America is constantly trying to change and move you off of your center. And what we say, you're better when you're on your center. So, and I guess about 30, 35 years ago, I got a FedEx from a partner in Florida, Wally. And I kind of knew what it was, but he wouldn't tell me. He said, Bernard, I got this document that was in my aunt's attic from 1957. The house had been closed. So I opened this thing up, and I know how I felt that day, because I have that same feeling. Here's a bill of sale of a young man in Alabama being sold for $550. And it changed my life. And I said right then, I wanted to know, how did we get in this predicament in America? So I started reading about everything about the African-American story. And what we began to see is that there were significant people in historical events. Matter of fact, the Kinsey Collection, the best way to say the Kinsey Collection is the historical record of America, starting in 1595 from document books, manuscripts, and then from 1865 from 2- and 3-dimensional art. Matter of fact, the sculpture that you see behind me is Artist Lane. She is now in the Oval Office in the White House. The Rosa Parks sculpture is Artist Lane. You follow me? So we know, and what was amazing to me when we started really working on this, and Khalil has just been enormously helpful in all aspects of the Kinsey Collection. We've had 31 cities around the world. We've been translated into Chinese and Spanish. We've done South America, China, we've done Hong Kong. We've been literally everywhere. And we've had 15 million people see it around the world. It's just something that you cannot believe that it started kind of in our basement, in our home. And it just grew into this exhibition that documents the African-American story of achievement and accomplishment. And that's what the Kinsey Collection does. When you see what we have in this collection or read our books, you have to change your idea about the African-American story. Because we know that the myth of absence is this, it's like Black people were there, but we just weren't part of the story. It's like going into a graveyard and there's no headstones. You follow me? So what the Kinsey Collection strives to do is to put this story intact, personality, a name, and a voice to people that did so much that nobody knows about. Right. And that's really all we do. When people leave the Kinsey Collection, they leave and they say, I didn't know that. Matter of fact, we were at Disney for 5 years, and the executives there flew their entire senior staff to our home here in the Palisades. And when they left, they said they couldn't believe that Black people had done all of the things that we've done. So what we say is that primary source, you can have your own opinions, you can't have your own facts. Okay, so we deal at FACTS, and we deal with another concept called learn, use, teach. Okay, learn something, use it, teach someone else. And that idea drives the Kinsey Collection, and everything in the collection is primary source. In other words, if we say it happened, we got a document that says it happened. Right. And that's what changes the conversation. You cannot outrun, we call it being trapped by the truth. You know what I mean? And so often in America, we run away from the truth, and what we're saying, we put it right in front of us.
Well, amen. Well, we'll talk in just a moment a little bit more about the next opportunity our listeners can have to hear you talk about the myth of absence and see some of the pieces of the Kinsey Collection on the next gathering. And so I'll pause there for a moment. I'll invite Lauren Cosentino, who is our Vice President for Advancement This is her first coffee with Jim as the
All right.
moderator. So let me invite her to handle for about 10 or 15 minutes some Q&A from the audience. So Lauren, why don't you go ahead and start the conversation?
Thank you so much. Mr. Kinsey, you are a popular man. We have had so many questions pouring in and really, really good questions. So let me start this off. There is a nationwide reckoning around building a more inclusive and equitable society. What are your thoughts on how we can best achieve that?
Well, justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those that are affected. That's the start. In other words, we have to have people get off the sidelines and get into the fight. You know what I mean? Because this is a fight for the very soul of America. Because since 1797, we have been conflicted about whether Black people are part of this Constitution, but it's written down. But we know everything that has happened has always been a conflict with slavery. So, we have a simple saying that you cannot talk about the Civil War without talking about slavery, and you cannot talk about civil rights without talking about Jim Crow, because those are the two seminal points that have created this disconnect in America, particularly as it relates to voting. I mean, I did some work, as a matter of fact, maybe at this next one, I identified about 45 riots, white people attacking Black citizens, and 38 of them were because of voter suppression. This is not now. This is starting in 1741 all the way up to the 1970s. You follow me? So we know that voter suppression has been the one key thing that has kept Black people from the ballot box. And what I love about our brothers and sisters in Georgia, we did something about it this year in terms of getting out to vote and changing the calculus for America. Because without Georgia, we would never have been able to have a majority in the Senate. And so Biden's program would never be able to be implemented. So voting, we have a 1867 piece about the first vote. And it's a Black man that coming out of slavery, voting for the first time. It's a powerful piece. And it's endemic of everything that we talk about, as it relates to if we vote, we get the rights that we want. And we understand that. My dad used to tell me that back in when I was a boy, about how important it was for Black people to vote their interests, because without that, Black people were always left out, even though we paid the same taxes as whites. But we didn't get the streets, we didn't get the sewers and the curbstones, the street lights. So my dad focused on those things in the Black community. And you can go to West Palm Beach right today, and you'll see a Black middle-class neighborhood that is beautiful. My dad started that 50 years ago because he insisted that the city put the tax dollars into the Black community in West Palm Beach.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As you might know, our president has made it one of his very first most important initiatives to hire a chief diversity officer at Pepperdine. And that search is well underway and under progress. What advice do you have for Pepperdine administration in its mission to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion at our school?
Well, first of all, you got the right guy at the top, Jim Gash. I've just been so impressed with him from the first day. And actually your entire staff. And even back in the 70s, I always felt that, Pepperdine had a good sense of itself. I mean, Faye McClure, Stacia Washington, you had so many graduates that have gone on and done wonderful, wonderful things. And I think the sensibilities at Pepperdine are the right ones. So what I would ask is some tweaking. In other words, let's get rid of the white islands. You follow me? That's simple. If you go in and your entire staff is white, then you're not doing your job. You follow me? Then you need to start accessing, other people. I mean, are you working with Black nonprofits? You follow me? What we have to do is to start saying, how do we change the calculus in terms of how we get things done, you know, in Pepperdine. And what we did in Xerox, we didn't try to change everybody else. We changed Xerox. And then we use Xerox as a way to change everybody else. And I think Pepperdine has that kind of leadership capability to begin to say, okay, we can do this, and we can do it throughout every school in every piece. And the basically what we would do, what we did at Xerox, I would take every school, I look at their diversity and ask the simple questions. You know, do you have a direct report that's somebody other than white in the store? And if you don't, you need to start thinking about it, okay? And you go through that, and then what's your pipeline? What's your recruiting? All of those things have to be put in place. And I know you all have that, but the difference is you need to put a different lens on it. And what we say with the Kinsey Collection, you got to look at it from a Black lens. And we say this simply, that if you fix the problem with Black people in this country, you'll fix Latinos, Asian, white women, disabled, and everybody else. Because we're at the bottom of this discrimination pool, and it's all based on color. And one of the things we're going to talk about next month is your skin speaks before you do. It's a simple concept. It's so true. The concept is that color is the main determinant in this country as it relates to agency in terms of your citizenship. So what we have to do is change that concept to allow people that are dark-skinned to begin to have more of an appetite at this big banquet that we have, you follow me, called America. Because America, most poor people are starving in this country. And this country is rich with abundance. And we're saying, how do we allow them to sit at this table and to eat? The measure of our society is not what we do for people that have too much. It's what we do for people that have too little. And that's what Shirley and I wake up with every day. God grant me a gift to give it to someone else that needs it more than me. That's what this is about. It's not about hoarding and wanting more. It's not having two catcher's mitt on your hand. You got to throw the ball back every once in a while. Because if you don't throw the ball back, God won't bless you, you know, from that. So I probably did too much on that. But
We've got time for one more question, Lauren.
All right.
Okay, question.
You got me rolling.
We have dozens and dozens and dozens of questions. How did your Pepperdine MBA help to equip you for your business career and beyond, both personally and professionally?
Well, let's say it this way. Having an MBA in 1973 changed my calculus. You know what I mean? People saw me differently, and then I began to see myself differently. I tell people even today, if you want to be a vice president, you need to start thinking and acting and dressing like a vice president. And I began that in 1973. I began to understand that if you want to be president of an organization, you got to start thinking like the president. And that's how I always do. I think like the president of the United States now. I always think about the top of the food chain and try to acquire the knowledge to be able to say, how do I fit into this? So it's really a question of preparing yourself and continuing to strive. You know, Ron Brown, the former Commerce Secretary, a good friend of ours, he had a saying, leave the door open and the ladder down. I will say it again, leave the door open and the ladder down. And we think to a large degree, that's how we get out. You follow me? By continuing to help each other and looking for more ways that we can coalesce and make this a better country called the United States.
Amen. Amen. The chat box, as Lauren said, has blown up with people just so eager to hear more and to hear questions answered and to get a better sense of who you are and what you do. And so we're actually, we planned ahead. We knew that sort of thing would come. And so we have already scheduled the second installment of the Presidential Speaker Series, where Bernard is going to talk about the myth of absence, and he's going to show us some of the Kinsey collection. Now it's going to be on Zoom, but you'll be able to watch it on Zoom, but Bernard's going to be here at Pepperdine in the Smothers Theater. And so we'll have big images of the parts of the Kinsey collection behind him as he talks about the myth of absence, what you didn't learn about American history in high school. So Bernard, give us a little taste of what viewers are going to hear on February 24th from 5 to 7 p.m.
Well, again, and you're going to hear from Shirley and Khalil. This is not the Bernard Kinsey show. It's really the Kinsey family. And that's what's so exciting about this. To be able to work with my son, who has really, adopted this thought process about, preserving our history is just really, really incredible. But I think here's what we have a saying. They're the stories that made America, and they're the stories that America made up. We know that 99% of what you got in the history book was made up. So what we do is we change that with facts, F-A-C-T-S, okay? And we show you from 1595, we have a 1598 document of an African-American couple in St. Augustine, Florida, Shirley's hometown, that are being married. That's not Jamestown, that's not Plymouth Rock, that's St. Augustine. So you don't hear about that. The only thing you hear about is 1619. We were here in 1565 in St. Augustine. You follow me? Mm-hmm. We had Black conquistadors. You follow me? So what we want to do is we're gonna take you from Patagonia to Canada, and we're gonna show you how the African-American story lives in Buenos Aires. Matter of fact, we're in conversations right now with Argentina, with Buenos Aires, about doing a program in February on the Kinsey Collection. You said, well, why Argentina? Well, in 1852, 52% of Argentina's population was Black. Why? Because of slavery. You follow me? Mm-hmm. So every part of South America, Central America, Mexico, matter of fact, Mexico in the 17th century was considered a black city. Veracruz. Lima, Peru was considered a Black city in the 15th century. We have these documents, so we're not just talking. We want you to know that we come from a great place, and we're great people. And when Black people and white people understand this story, we're gonna have respect for each other. Khalil has a great way of saying, he said, Dad, if I respect you and you don't respect me, we can never have an equal relationship. So the idea with the Kinsey Collection is to equalize this relationship by giving you more information about who you are, and where you came from, and filling that hole in your heart, which most Black people have. It's a hole, and that hole is, I don't know who I am, and I don't know where I came from. So when you leave, you're gonna know those things. And we're gonna say, get our books, get another book, and start reading and learning, and then pushing yourself. We have a saying, the biggest tragedy in life is not death, is having a life without service and purpose. Mm-hmm. So we want people to be purposeful, because that's where your motivation, that's where your energy comes from. When you connect with that thing inside of you that says you can do this, okay? And we go back to, all these water walking capabilities. So you got to get out of the boat though. You can't water walk in the boat. You got to get out and get engaged and be part of this process in America. And it's a good process, as screwed up as it is, and Black people catching hell the way we catch hell, but it is still the best process we got. And you can win in it, because there are a lot of people that will help you once you decide that you want to play the game.
Well, amen. This has been so engaging, and I can't wait. And I'm sure everybody else listening to this can't wait for February 24th. So make sure and sign up for that. And thank you, Bernard. Look forward to seeing Shirley and hanging out with Khalil again. What an impressive guy. And we're so grateful for this opportunity to partner. Stay tuned on February 24th for another announcement as well. So God bless you all. Thank you, Bernard. We'll see you all next time.